JB, why don't you come on up? All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I'm joined here today with Attorney General JB McCuskey. Last night, like many West Virginians, we sat down to watch the March Madness Selection Committee. Quite frankly, many of us were looking to see how WVU was going to be seeded in the tournament. Nearly every single sports fan, pundit, bracketologist, everyone had WVU as a shoo-in for the tournament. In fact, leading up to Selection Sunday, 111 out of the 111 bracketologists projected WVU to make the tournament. And for good reason. The selection committee for years has talked about the importance of quad one wins. Now, for those who don't know much about a quad one win, this is when you defeat a team ranked 1st through 75th. Obviously, it depends upon whether you're home, neutral site, or away. Well, West Virginia had 6 quad one wins. And that was combined with an undefeated record against quad 3 and quad 4 opponents. 3 wins against top 10 teams and the 24th toughest schedule in America. West Virginia deserved to be in the NCAA tournament. This was a miscarriage of justice and robbery at the highest levels. Now, who was the last team to get into the tournament? Ahead of the Mountaineers. That would be the University of North Carolina. Now, let's see how their resume stacks up. The Tar Heels went 1-12 in quad 1 games and even had a quad 3 loss. And we keep hearing about the importance of these quad 1 wins, but UNC couldn't even get more than 1. They also had the 25th toughest schedule in America, right behind WVU. Now, here's something you may not know. UNC had representation in the room during the selection process. Let me repeat that. UNC had representation in the room during the selection process. Bubba Cunningham is the athletic director for UNC. He also happens to be the head of the tournament selection committee. Now, it's being reported by a number of outlets that Cunningham had a significant bonus incentive, at least $70,000 to get into the tournament, arguably more if they advanced, with more incentives on the way. And I want folks to let that sink in for just a minute. Of the 111 brackets that were projected pertaining to North Carolina, UNC was only in 27 of them. This stinks at the highest level. Now, when pressed on why the committee left WVU out, Bubba Cunningham, once again, the AD, the school that deprived WVU of the slot, blamed the injury on a WVU player being out, Tucker DeVries. But we know this doesn't pass the smell test, and that WVU, I believe, went 13-10 with DeVries outside the lineup, and they still had huge victories against Kansas and Iowa State. Any way you slice it, this thing reeks of corruption. You know, we've been involved in dealing with the NCAA in the past. There are some watching now know that I brought litigation against the NCAA with a number of my colleagues a few years ago. I know there were a lot of chants to free Raekwon Battle, which is what we did when the NCAA rules for transfers was out of whack. It's hard for me to put that aside right now, knowing that West Virginia was out in front suing in 2023, and here we are, an NCAA, I don't know what's going on. Is this retribution? We're going to have to get to the bottom of that. Today, I'm joined here with our Attorney General. He's the Chief Legal Officer for the state. And I've asked Attorney General McCuskey to launch an investigation into the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee to determine if any backroom deals, corruption, bribes, or any nefarious activity occurred during the selection process. I know that the Attorney General and I are going to leave no stone unturned during this process. We need to get to the bottom of it. I think a lot of Americans count on the fact that there's transparency and that there's fairness when dealing with selection, whether you're talking about college football playoffs, remember what happened to Florida State a couple years ago, or when it comes to March Madness. Those are basic things that all Americans deserve. But I want to make sure that we're standing up. We're going to get to the bottom of what happened. We want those objective criteria, and I'm now pleased to turn it over to the state's Attorney General, J.B. McCuskey. Thank you, J.B.
It's wonderful to have a governor who loves our university this much, and I'm so appreciative of your passion for our student athletes and our state's flagship university. As the state's chief legal officer, as Patrick mentioned, I think it's incumbent upon me to work with the governor to ensure that this process is fair. And it's easy for the casual fan to look at the NCAA tournament and see it as sort of a fun way to fill out a bracket. But at the end of the day, it's $1 billion business that involves NIL. It involves the lifetime's worth of work for a ton of student athletes this would have been the pinnacle of their career. And if you watched this WVU basketball team this year, not enough can really be said about what Coach DeVries has done this year, about what AD Ren Baker has done this year, to put a team on the court that overcame unbelievable obstacles. We have 11 new players that weren't on the team last year, and we earned a spot in the NCAA tournament. You can't really make an argument any other way. There is no mathematical metric that shows you that WVU should have been left out in favor of some of the teams that were there. So what we know is that the NCAA has, in what I believe is a relatively antiquated process for selecting the 68 teams that go into the process. And what we're asking for is a level of detail and a level of transparency and a level of accountability so that teams like West Virginia can plan in the future and say, what are we supposed to do to get into the tournament? If having a net ranking of 51 and having 6 quad 1 wins and not losing any quad 3 and quad 4 games, if these are not the things that they're looking for, we need to know what they are looking for, because the people of West Virginia are investing not just their emotion, not just their energy, and not just their time into our Mountaineers. We are investing enormous amounts of the people's money into these teams as well. And so we're hoping to work with the NCAA to find out what is the objective metric. And if it is not an objective metric, if it is purely subjective, how is it that we are supposed to build a schedule and build a roster and build a team in order to get into the NCAA tournament prospectively? We're super hopeful that the NCAA is going to work with us to find the answers to these questions, to put to bed any of the very well-heeled basketball analysts who have all, to a T, said this was a travesty of justice. This team deserved to be in the tournament. And like Governor Morrisey just said, not having Tucker DeVries on the floor can't possibly be the reason, because we beat a ton of great teams without Tucker DeVries on the floor. And if anybody ever watched Javon Small play this year, you know that we had a chance to win any game against any team anywhere in the country this year, which is what 6 quad 1 wins proves. We beat 6 teams that are in the tournament. 6. So we want to find out what it is that the NCAA is doing to objectify this process, because there's too much money, there's too much emotion, and there's too much time being placed by too many people in order for this to be a completely subjective analysis. What we want is the 68 best teams in the tournament so that every fan in America understands that this tournament is actually being played for who the best team is. And that is what every fan of every team in the entire country demands from a tournament that is as famous and as wonderful as March Madness is. With that, I would just say, let's go Mountaineers, and I am enormously proud of our team, and I'm super excited to watch our women head down to Chapel Hill and make it all the way into the Sweet 16, rolling right through the Tar Heels on their way to go. So with that, Governor Morrisey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to thank everyone for coming here. I know that as we get more information, the Attorney General and I are going to be coming back to you to report that, but we've asked, we're going to start to demand to get to the bottom of it. We need objective criteria to make sure that everyone knows this is a level playing field. This isn't just about the blue bloods who gain attention, that if you're going to be the grind 'em out school, the wonderful school, WVU, and what we have in West Virginia, we want to be on a level playing field. That's what we're asking for, and we think that West Virginians and all Americans deserve answers. With that, we'll conclude today, and we'll take any questions that you may have. Brad?
Hi, guys. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
I'm curious
Nice
about...
green St. Patty's Day tie.
I inappropriately wore my only green tie, which is a Marshall tie.
We love Marshall. We love the Thundering Herd, man.
But I do wonder about the investigative methodology, which is, it sounds like you're asking the NCAA to cooperate, to sit down perhaps with representatives of the Attorney General's office. But might there be subpoenas or Freedom of Information Act requests? How do you see this moving forward? Will there be a lawsuit?
Well, I will say this. I think it's premature to talk about the litigation right now. Right now, we need answers right away. I can tell you that from my experience personally with the NCAA, we wrote a few letters during the transfer eligibility rule that they effectively ignored. So we're never going to rule anything out. But what I will say this, we want to work collaboratively with them. This smells a great deal. So first you try to work closely with them to get all the information that you need. I would ask the NCAA to work and collaborate with them as we try to seek this information. And quite frankly, it's nothing that they should hide. They should want to provide all this information to it. So I think Attorney General McCuskey is stepping up, and he'll be sending out some letters and some material, and I think that he can talk further about that.
Yeah, Brad, I think as somebody who has made West Virginia the most transparent state government in the country, what I know is that if something does smell, the best way to relieve the smell is to be transparent about what's going on. And so our hope is, you know, WVU has had a long and storied history with the NCAA. They've been great partners with us, promoting our football and basketball and women's soccer and men's soccer and Marshall's men's soccer, and you name all of the ways in which our universities have benefited from the NCAA system. So it's always best, I think, to start in a collaborative way and say, hey, you know, if this didn't happen, why don't you explain to us what did happen? Because that explanation, I think, will solve a lot of our problems. And if they're willing to do that, we would certainly welcome that to be the process going forward. Because what we're really looking for is an objective understanding of what the process was and an objective understanding of what our student athletes and what our school administrators need to be doing in order to get our teams into these tournaments next year.
Yeah. And I would add one more thing. Look, we don't know all the details. We recognize that someone needs to be in charge of the selection committee, right? That occurs and that the conferences weigh in on the various people that are picked. But I think that people deserve to be educated about not just all the criteria, but all the people and all the interests involved in the decision-making process. Because if you're in the room throughout the entirety of the process, but then you take a walk at the end, you know, we have to ask ourselves, is that the right type of process? We're going to learn all this through the investigative process. I think that's good to do. And America, West Virginia, benefits from that. I just want to stand strong for WVU, for Marshall, and for all the grind-em-out schools. These are folks that are working very, very hard. And the concept that something is going to happen, what occurred last night, should be really disliked, disfavored by everyone in America. Next question.
Hi, this is Lisa with WSAZ. A lot of folks have a question in terms of when you go up against something like this, do you feel like this is a worthwhile pursuit? Do you feel like the overall impact of something like this is going to be positive? What's the overall impact?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. I can tell you a lot of people always have had doubt. I know when I was down the hall as the state attorney general, when we launched the lawsuit against the NCAA to ultimately allow Raekwon Battle to be able to play, a lot of people said, what are you doing? And we tried, we sent multiple letters to the NCAA that they didn't respond adequately to. At the end of the day, we helped change fundamentally the transfer eligibility rules. There was litigation in the past, coming a lot out of West Virginia on NIL. So I think the answer is when you're talking about multi-billion-dollar businesses and universities that have a very big stake in the outcome, absolutely. And West Virginia, through my office and now through JB as well, we're going to have a very significant impact going forward on what happens. Why? Because I think people know that West Virginia does it right. And we've had that past success. How it works in this case remains to be seen. I think if everyone in America starts asking those same questions to the NCAA, the quicker that information gets public, the better. We want transparency, we want objective criteria, and maybe we won't be able to reverse this particular situation, but for the future, it'll be better, and that's good for everyone.
Also, talk to us about your sign there, not mincing any words.
No, look, I mean, I'll tell you what, I've watched what the NCAA has done over a prolonged period of time, and I've seen the arrogance of the institution, and that's been disturbing to me. That's why I was part of a group that sued them a couple years ago, and I followed them, you know, going back to the days, the limitations of what athletes could do in terms of being able to sometimes just pay their own way through school. And so the NCAA has made some positive changes over the years, but I think we need to make sure they know that they're going to be accountable to the states, they're going to be accountable to the American public, because everyone's paying attention. So I urge them to work with our office, work with the Attorney General to make sure that we have those objective criteria and something like this doesn't happen in the future. Yeah.
So I think one really important thing to mention here is there are objective criteria. We are now in 2025, and this isn't the NCAA tournament of 1960. In 1960, it was a fun little tournament, and people weren't paying quite as much of attention. It certainly wasn't as big of a business. The tournament has evolved in a way that is incredible for the fans. It's incredible for our student athletes. It's great for our coaches. It's great for everybody. But the selection committee has stayed exactly the same. And sometimes what we're really talking about is sometimes processes need to evolve. And if we can use this scenario as a way to start to use some of these incredibly computer-generated models and some of the ways in which you can truly predict what a team's season was and where they are in comparison to other people using objective data as opposed to the eye test, I think that's better for everyone, because it starts the year off where everyone says, I can build my schedule, I can build my roster, I can fund my NIL in a way that we know what we have to get done in order to get into this tournament, because this tournament is the end of the season. And if not making it makes your season unsuccessful, everyone needs to know what success looks like. And I think moving forward, what we really would like to see is an evolution of the selection process in a way that mirrors the evolution of the tournament, its grandness, and its impact on our entire country's culture for a month. It's the best month of the year. There's nothing better than waking up on Thursday morning and knowing that you're going to walk into the office and get to watch basketball the whole day. It's the first Thursday in the NCAA tournament is the absolute best. And we want to make sure that the 68 teams that are starting on that Thursday are the premier 68 teams in the country.
I would add one more point as well. Look, at the end of the day, part of the reason this comes to the fore, there's a lot of big money at stake, and there have been arguments made that there's some incentive plans in terms of how people are going to get paid depending upon whether their school goes in. I think it's important that we all have transparency about what's happening with all of the incentives, what's happening with all the money. Because, look, I can speak for every WVU fan in our state to know that we fight hard. We have scrappy teams. It's a great university. And I'm really thankful for the supporters for WVU. But, you know, maybe we don't compete as much as some of the Blue Bloods in the financial arena. We certainly do on the football field and on the basketball court. And I want to make sure that people know what all the incentives are so that we're operating on a more level playing field. So that's part of my motivation as well. Any final questions? One more for you back there, sir.
Taylor Cannon, Charles Gazette. What's the end goal with this? I mean, obviously you guys talk about the transparency.
Yeah.
What are you guys ultimately wanting to achieve by going through this process?
Well, a couple things. One, I've mentioned that we want to make sure that a travesty like this doesn't happen again. But second, it's important that when issues like this come up, that the NCAA has that full transparency in terms of all the money, the financial incentives, that's available for the whole country to see, because there is big money that's at stake. Also, I want to make sure that I stand up for West Virginia and for WVU and Marshall, all the schools that are competing against the Blue Bloods. So I would say that we want transparency. I would say that we want to make sure that all the criteria are objective and that they follow them. If you know what the rules of engagement are, you follow them, right? So if I know that strength of schedule is going to be rewarded number one, or it's quad one, or it's a Ken Palm, a rating, depending upon what it is, I'm going to act accordingly, because you can change some of the numbers based upon your margin of victory and who you're scheduling and whether you're scheduling home, neutral, or away. I think everyone deserves to know what the rules are up front, because that way everyone's going to have a much better experience.
The tournament starts tomorrow.
Yeah.
First round play-in games. Any thought of an injunction?
I think we want the NCAA, if you're watching right now, I'm asking you to cooperate right away, provide that information to us, because we want to make sure that everyone's educated before this process starts. Let's not run in the dark corner. Let's get the information to us right away, and then we can follow back up with you. So with that, I want to say thank you, and we'll look forward to being in close touch. Thanks, guys.